I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. And this is the I Hate Politics candidate interview with Will Jawando for Montgomery County Executive. I'm Umbreen Khan, sitting in for Sunil Dasgupta. I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools, and our local governments as they function in diverse, democratic, and sometimes divided societies. As part of this show, we have conversations with local, state, and sometimes federal candidates. And friends, the primary election season is here. Mark your calendars. Early voting begins June 11th, and voting day is June 23rd. The mail-in ballots will start to go out on May 9th. Now, a note about our process. There are two candidates running for county executive in the Republican primary, and we hope to interview the winner in the run-up to the general election. In the Democratic primary, there are several candidates who filed to appear on the ballot. However, after evaluating the most recent fundraising reports and reviewing campaign operations, we are focusing on the three frontrunners. We believe listeners will benefit from the depth we bring to these interviews. We are releasing each in the order recorded, and this week, my conversation is with Will Jawando. We sat down in Silver Spring, not far from Oakview Elementary School, where Jawando was a student. He later earned a basketball scholarship to attend St. John's College High School in Washington, D.C. At 31, he launched his first campaign to represent D20 in the Maryland House of Delegates and lost. 2 years later, he ran unsuccessfully in a crowded primary field to represent the 8th Congressional District. In 2018, he was elected to serve as an at-large member of the County Council, and in 2022, he was reelected. Now, he's seeking the top job in Montgomery County, which is where our conversation kicks off. Will Jawando, welcome to the I Hate Politics podcast.
Much improved host.
Oh, Sunil, he didn't mean that. I promise.
No.
I am guest hosting this week. Actually, for the next couple weeks, we're doing a special series on the county executive races. What draws you into this race at a personal level?
I've dedicated pretty much my whole professional career to public service, either at the staff level or being elected the last 8 years to the council. I want everyone to have opportunity to live a good life. I've seen the various struggles, joys, difficulties that life in this community can bring. You know, my dad immigrated here in 1970 from a war-torn Nigeria. My mom from Kansas. We were super low income. I moved 5 times before I was in the 8th grade looking for affordable housing. I lost my best friend to gun violence when I was coming out of high school. But I also had some great teachers at Oakview Elementary and mentors and coaches and people who helped keep me on track. And I just feel a deep debt of gratitude, but also urgency to make sure that the good things happen to more people and the bad things happen to less people. And I've experienced a lot of those, but there's so many people. And we're really at I think a critical point about what's the direction of the county going to be? How are we going to stand up for our values? And who are we going to stand up for? And I'm clear, it's going to be working people. It's going to be people who have disproportionately been underserved, because when you lift those boats, everyone does well. One of the things that's unique about me, I think, in this race is I bring a broad array of policy experience at the federal and local level. Having ran large programs at the U.S. Department of Education, like Race to the Top and investing in innovation.
Talk about those for a second.
Yeah,
what are those?
So Race to the Top was an effort to give grants to states to race to the top, to improve student achievement, to improve kindergarten readiness. And the better you did, the more you demonstrated success, the more funding you would get. It was kind of an incentive, because federal money for education is a small part. It's less than 10%. Most of it comes locally. So how are you going to use that money? And the idea was that you leverage it in a kind of a incentive-driven way. And it was an innovative idea at the time in the Obama administration. Investing in innovation was similar in that you had, some organizations that are just getting started had a proof of concept but hadn't gotten off the ground. They got smaller grants. If you had done some good work, you had a great mentoring organization, but you needed to scale, you got a medium grant. And if you were proven track record and you wanted to go big, you got a large grant. And that was a new thing for the federal government at the time to do that. And I helped with the implementation and selection and management of those. I think that's a key part of this executive job, right? How do we invest when you have limited resources? How do you invest in what works? How do you right-size government to make sure that everyone's kind of swimming in the right direction? So I think having that legislative experience. The other thing is I spent 10 years on Capitol Hill, passing some of these really important bills like the Workforce Investment Act, Head Start, worked on No Child Left Behind. I think all that really helps me not only build a deep, broad network of smart people who are now, many of whom unfortunately don't have jobs, that worked in the Biden and Obama administrations, as you seek to build a cabinet that will be representative and smart. But it also gives me a really good, I know how federal money flows down through the state and local. I know how we implement it locally, having served on the council the last 8 years. So I think I'm uniquely positioned to kind of bring all that together in service of the residents of the county.
In the last 8 years, sitting and serving on the council as an at-large member, I want to ask you to talk about 2 accomplishments that reflect your ability to build the support that you were just describing.
I was very proud to lead the effort on rent stabilization, along with Councilmember Kristen Mink and several others. I grew up as a renter, as I mentioned, had to move because of affordability. 40% of our county are renters, disproportionately if you're Black, Latino, or an immigrant. 60% of African-American residents are renters, 50% of Latino residents. And that's hundreds of thousands of people that had no stability, that rents were going up 20, 30, 40% in a year, and they were being displaced or evicted or becoming homeless in some cases. And now we are one of the largest jurisdictions in the country, and others followed suit, like Prince George's County and others, to pass a rent stabilization to say that you can't just do that every year. You can make a profit for sure, but it can't price people out. That was a tough bill to pass. There was a lot of opposition.
Talk to me about how you manage that opposition.
Yeah, so the number one contributor to local campaigns are developers. They didn't like the bill. Why are they the number one contributor? Because they want to have the most outsized influence. It's one of the reasons I'm participating in public financing, because I can't take their money. So we had to build a broad people-based working families coalition across so many different groups: labor, immigrants, seniors, people on a fixed income. And we had to demonstrate the case. We had to collect hundreds and hundreds of stories. We had to get people to complain. The one thing that people forget is that when your rent is high, you're scared to complain sometimes because you're at the mercy of the landlord. The power imbalance is huge. And so when we still don't have just cause, which we're working on at the state level.
What is just cause?
Just cause eviction is a bill that says unless you have a good reason, non-payment, damaging the property, reasons that we would all agree with, you can't just end someone's lease. Because right now people are either on a 1 year, a 2 year, or a month-to-month lease. And under current law, for any reason, your lease can be not extended. And I remind people that for so many people, 400,000 residents, where they're renting is their home. They've been there 10, 15, 20 years. These are their homes. And the idea that they could just be hanging out there on a limb like that at the end of a year, say, sorry, you got to go. That's not good for them. It's not good for our economy. It's not moral. So I would say rent stabilization, we had to build a big coalition. We got it passed and we implemented it, and it's helping families. The other I would bring up, and it's a close tie, but I'm going to say criminal justice reform. On the heels of the murders of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery and Robert White here in Silver Spring, very close. I think about him often. We had never had a criminal justice reform bill in the county's history. And now, thanks to efforts that I helped lead, if an officer kills a resident, there has to be an independent investigation. The first bill I introduced on January 15th, 2019, Martin Luther King's birthday. I was a council member for less than 2 weeks. That was the first bill I introduced. And then we followed that up with Community Informed Police Training Act, which adds 30 hours onto the academy in racial equity and communication and de-escalation. And a landmark use of force bill, banning shooting at moving vehicles and choking people. And if an officer sees another officer committing a crime, they have a duty to intervene, and they can get in trouble if they don't. those are some of the things we had to also build a big coalition. And I took a lot of heat from some members of our community, but I believe that you can have a highly paid, compensated, well-trained, accountable police force. And that's what we should have. And so, I mean, we've done others. Summer Rise, I'm super proud of. It's our county's largest summer jobs program that I started before I was on the council. And now thousands of students have gone through it for the last 8 years.
First day in office, what is your number one priority?
The number one priority has to be making sure people can make it here and afford to live here. And at the top of that list is the affordability of housing. I spent a lot of my time on the council working on that for the 40% of renters, making sure they don't get priced out of their apartments, building more affordable housing. So expanding the amount of housing that's here that is affordable. That's a big part of it. The reason I announced recently that I'm not in support of the property tax increase is because it's a regressive increase that's going to hit everyone the same and hurt disproportionately people who are most struggling right now, seniors on a fixed income, low income homeowners. So one of the top priorities, we have to pursue tax reform that's progressive. And then raising wages, I think, is another big thing. I introduced the largest prevailing wage expansion in Maryland history so that when people work on a public road project, they get paid a wage that supports their ability to live here.
Yeah, let's explain to listeners what prevailing wage means.
It's a wage that is high enough and competitive enough in the marketplace that allows you to live here. It's a wage that is negotiated and with labor partners to be a life-sustaining wage, and it varies on the region and in the industry. It's not a race to the bottom. It's saying, how do we support a wage that actually allows people who are building the project to either purchase the product or live in the house or go to the school? And it does cost more, but I think, we should be model employers.
There was a big vote in July of 2025 that you were opposed to that related to changing zoning. What was going on there?
Yeah, in 2020, I actually kicked off the attainable housing discussion because I introduced a twin set of proposals called More Housing for More People. One was rent stabilization near transit. We've gotten that done countywide now. And the other was a missing middle or attainable housing strategy to allow for duplexes and triplexes and those types of buildings near metro sites, within a mile, to be exact, of metro sites. And it never made it through. The idea was that, yes, zoning does have a role to play, and I still believe that. However, you have to do it in an intentional way, and in a way that doesn't displace people and that takes in concerns of infrastructure and affordability. What do I mean? So the corridors approach that passed, which I did not ultimately support. Corridors, if you take University Boulevard, Georgia Avenue, and Aspen Hill, these are places where lower income renters and homeowners rent, because the homes, and this was proven in our staff reports, that are on the corridors on the main streets are 25% less valuable than the ones that are in the neighborhoods. Think about why. You don't want to be near smoke or crime or traffic, all those things. And who lives in those homes are people who have achieved home ownership at a lower end of the scale, or they're renters of those homes. And so when you incentivize the upzoning of those properties, you are in fact displacing the very people who have accessed naturally occurring affordable housing.
What is it that you were opposing?
You're changing the economics of it. Say you're a renter on University Boulevard and you now have, your property has now been upzoned. That the owner of that property who doesn't live there can say, oh, I can now sell this, turn it into 2 expensive townhomes, and those renters are gone. Say you're a senior on a fixed income next door to that. You didn't do anything with your property, but now the properties around you have all gone in value, so your property taxes go up, and you could be priced out over time. I offered an amendment to this, for example, to say, okay, the most likely thing to happen is a 1950s Rambler is knocked down, or 2 of them are knocked down, and the properties are brought together, which you can do, and they build 2 or 3 very expensive townhomes, which are going to all each individually cost more than the home that was there before, because that's the only economics of it. They're going to cost $900,000. I said, let's make at least one of those townhomes affordable. So at least we give the chance of someone who was there before to come back, or someone at the lower price points. That amendment was rejected. So it's not I'm against the concept. It's a marginal strategy that we should be part of the mix. But in this instance, I think it's going to have the effect of displacing people. And then you have this other issue of, do we have the appropriate infrastructure and school capacity and all those things? And if your house was built before 1993, you have a small little water pipe from WFSC. If it's after, it's bigger. We have to talk about those things. And I think too often we just kind of gloss over them.
We're talking in a neighborhood that is, if you were on the listserv, you would be aware there is a lot of strong feelings about the proposed Eastern Silver Spring planning, which would rezone parts of this neighborhood and allow for upwards of 1,000 potential apartments to be built near the YMCA. One of the questions that keeps coming up is, did the planners envision or assess infrastructure of the neighborhood water system? Did they look at traffic?
I've asked those questions. I've been on the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee for 8 years, or formerly the Planning, Housing, and Economic Development Committee, but the one that is over planning. And I have asked these questions. And it's due diligence to ask. And it doesn't mean you're against the policy. It's just like, let's bring WSSC in. Let's bring DOT in. Let's have the real conversation and understand that there are trade-offs here. No one's against more housing, or at least I'm not. Some people maybe are. But the way you do it matters, and including community in the conversation and addressing those things really matters. Bethesda Elementary, the superintendent took the unprecedented step last year that it was so overcrowded that he let anyone leave that wanted to leave and go to any school in the county. It had never happened before. Yes, our enrollment's declining, but there are certain places where that's not happening. We're a big school system, so you just have to take place into account.
What is affordable housing in Montgomery County? It's a question I'm asking every candidate. How do you define it?
Well, the definition of being rent burdened or housing burdened is paying 30% or more of your monthly check on rent or housing. And many, many people do that. So I think a definition of affordability would need to be under that threshold.
Okay. In Montgomery County, we have a large population of individuals who have 2 members of the household working, 1 child, and not in a position to buy a home.
I talk about the 3 Ps: producing more housing, preserving existing affordable housing. So when you talk about starter homes, the reason you want to disincentivize the building of McMansions in neighborhoods like this one and tax that is because that removes a affordable home off the market forever and replaces it with something very expensive. And over time, that has a big effect. And you can't tell people what to do, but you sure as heck can make it more difficult and not incentivize it. Similarly, with our tax and incentive policy, I just was at a groundbreaking on Rockville Pike, right across from the North Bethesda Metro, like White Flint area, for a 100% affordable building that's 268 units, and it's going to be between $35,000 and $85,000 a year. So a teacher, a firefighter, a laborer would be able to access this great school district, this great community right down from Pike and Rose. And that's a great deal because we put $30 million in it as the county to make that affordable and worked with developers. That's a good use of incentive because it's going to produce affordable housing at all ranges. There's another bill that I opposed that my 2 opponents have supported that is currently giving a 20-year tax windfall, so no property tax for 20 years for properties that are built on Metro. There's one property that took advantage of that at Grosvenor, where apartments are going for $10,000, $11,000, $12,000, $13,000 a month. I think that's a horrible use of taxpayer revenue. Those are foregone property tax. You could have a kid today, and they would have to be in their 3rd year at Maryland before that building pays any property tax. And property tax is our main driver for roads, for schools, for infrastructure. So I think that was a bad incentive.
But that is transit-oriented development.
It is. And I'm not against that. What I'm against is that level of subsidy or of foregone revenue for the county. I think those are some of the most desirable places to live on metro sites. You don't need to give that level of subsidy. You have to make decisions about where you're getting your most bang for your buck.
County executive has endorsed you for this race. You're supporting the county executive to come back onto the council. This budget is recommending a property tax that you have spoken out about. What is it that you would do differently? You have the council president putting forward a different proposal. We have right now facing us the challenge of funding county government, 10,000 employees, $600 million in nonprofit contracts to be able to support the services, but we have to be able to pay for it.
I stood up with nonprofit providers of healthcare and food assistance and housing and our labor partners, our security guards in our schools who start at $38,000 a year, our teachers, our paraeducators, our bus drivers at MDOT, and MCDOT, and said no property tax increase because people can't afford it right now and it's regressive, but we must live up to our commitment and fund the contracts, these cost of living adjustments. And I want to progressively tax millionaires who have done disproportionately well in the big, ugly bill. The average millionaire, $70,000 tax cut in this last tax season. We need to recoup some of that money because where is it coming from? Medicaid, Head Start, food assistance, and put that into our nonprofits. So I also proposed a 5% increase above what the county executive did on the nonprofits from 2.5 to 7.5 using that millionaire's tax.
And you're 2.5 to 7.5, you're referring specifically to the cost of living adjustments for the nonprofit contracts?
Yes, for the nonprofit contracts.
Okay.
And so that money, it's about little more than $8 million I would get from the millionaire's tax, which is I would fund directly to the nonprofits who are supporting our social service network and are really an augmented part of county government, to your point. And
what's the reception from your colleagues on the council to this?
Well, we're working our way through it. My other one, people say no taxes on anybody, and some, we'll see where it lands. We're still, even with my proposal, are going to have to find reductions in the budget. So looking at new positions, money that hasn't been spent, all those things have to be on the table. I think long term, we have to move to a more progressive tax system for property and income. Right now, the property tax is flat. A commercial building like Marriott headquarters pays the same property tax as your single family home. In DC and Virginia, they don't. We always want to compare ourselves to Virginia. They don't do it that way. Commercial pays higher and residential is lower. Similarly, on income tax, everyone pays a flat 3.2. I'm going to use a little bit of authority this year, hopefully, to go to 3.3 on millionaires, but we need more authority there. There have been bills in Annapolis to do that, but Delegate Janelle Wilkins did pass a bill this session to put a working group on county revenue enhancements. There's no way we're going to be able to maintain our level of services, build our infrastructure, provide supports to people the way our current tax system is structured. And we have to grow our economy too, but that's a long-term strategy. You have to do both. You have fair taxes and grow economy. You have to do both at the same time.
I want to talk about the nonprofits for a second. We currently have a system of reimbursements.
Doesn't work really well.
Would you make any difference in the way that the county currently administers a lot of its services, which is through these nonprofits, which essentially turns the nonprofit into a service provider for the county government?
That's what's happened over time. I think we need to reevaluate that.
We don't ask as a county for more rigorous assessment and evaluation.
I think that's part of it. That's part of investing in what works, and you need to get a handle on that.
How would you reform it? Do you have a plan of how you would do that?
I'm interested in economies of scale of can we get an evaluator in? So when I did MoCo Boost, it was our largest and first ever guaranteed income pilot in the county. We gave $800 a month to 300 families for 2 years. I raised half the money from philanthropy. The other half was county taxpayer dollars. And we had the Urban Institute go alongside us and assess the program and produce a report. There are a lot of great evaluators and people who can do this work. Can we work together across the various HHS and other service providers? There's a way to maybe share evaluation, get a big contract with one person. There's ways to do this that I don't think we've done, even maybe across jurisdiction. Aisha Braveboy has endorsed me as well, the Prince George's County executive. And I've talked to her about how we can blend and, work together on some issues. And I don't want to lock myself into how exactly we're going to do that, who we're going to get, what kind, but I think I am committed to making sure that we have robust evaluation and that factors into grant awards. And right now, the other thing I want to change is how we reimburse. I think we hamper a lot of these nonprofits by the reimbursement model. It takes too long. I can't tell you how many calls I've gotten since I've been a council member of, we haven't gotten our money yet, and we have payroll, and we need to work backwards a little bit, especially if it's a proven contractor. Give them more money up front so that they don't have to get in this emergency situation when they're providing services.
How will you work with labor unions? They have a lot of power.
They are partners. Again, we don't have a worker problem. We have a wage problem. It's clear as day. When labor was doing well and had the most membership in U.S. history, that's when people had the largest and most robust working class and middle class, and where people were doing well. When you can collectively bargain for wages and benefits, it increases productivity and it helps people have a high quality of life. So they are strong partners of mine. I'm proud to be supported by them because they represent working people. And I'm going to work with everybody, but I think labor unions are a big part of what's right about America. And I think the resurgence we've seen, whether it be Starbucks or any other place, I think it's a good thing. These are people who are cleaning buildings, taking out trash, driving buses, teaching classrooms. Those are the people who I'm glad to be in this fight with.
BRT. We had this vision 10 years ago. A plan was passed. It didn't get implemented. The three frontrunners sit on the county council, and you're all promising to implement vision to address issues. BRT was an explicitly articulated past plan, and here we are, 2026, and we barely moved.
Yeah, I mean, I think we haven't gone as fast or as far as we should have. I think there's a couple things. One, COVID hit and it slowed everything down. But two, the current county executive just has not prioritized it as much as he should have. I'm happy to have his support. I disagree with him on this tax increase, and this is an area where I think he could have done better as well. I live off of New Hampshire Avenue, one of the lines that should be built. It's desperately needed. I live in the eastern part of the county where it's harder to get around via transit. So it will be a priority of mine to build it out. We need to make sure we maintain the federal funding commitments with this. That's a big part of the mix. You have to invest in it. I think, as I talked about earlier, we are hamstrung by our current tax situation. The reason Tyson's and the Silver Line were built is because they taxed that area and invested that money into infrastructure. And we have to be able to not have all the burden fall on disproportionately homeowners, which is what we have. And that's why people are squeezed. We have to balance it out and have our commercial partners do more, because in doing so, no one benefits more from public transit and people moving quicker than businesses.
And so working with businesses to be able to pick up some of their cost and to share, do you feel confident in your ability to structure those kinds of relationships?
Absolutely. I have,
Can you give an example of something that you've done?
I'll talk about the White Oak TIF, where David Bramble, who's a new developer, and one of the things they said with rent stabilization is no one's going to build here, but then he came in and that project will be under rent stabilization. And he said in the Washington Business Journal, the numbers work for us. That's an example where we have allowed them to borrow against future property tax revenue because we believe in that project. That's what a TIF is. And we've also put some money into the deal to help make it happen. And so I meet with everybody. I'm an at-large member. All the folks that may or may not support me now in the business community, and many of the small businesses do, which are 95% of the businesses, I will remind people. We're going to have a big table with all of them and work with everybody on plans that work.
And that is your answer to those who say you can't work with the business community.
Oh, yeah. Well, look, I mean, we've helped so many small businesses. I'm helping a business now. We're close to right here in Four Corners, add about 400 square feet so they can get bigger. One of the things we need to do is make the permitting process and the regulatory process easier. I think that's something that there's broad agreement about. And I'm excited about that because it can be a little cumbersome. Both my parents are small business owners here. My mom has a catering business. My dad has a senior transportation service. I helped them both start those businesses. I am confident that whether it's businesses big, small, or medium, that they're going to have a good relationship with me and we're going to help them grow. And in addition, we've got a great large life science, bioscience hub. I went to China and Japan with the county executive, met with 40 companies. 2 have already decided to come here. There's a big opportunity to scale in that arena as well as hospitality. So I'm very confident that we're going to meet every type of constituency and move the county forward, whether it's business, labor, working people. It's not against each other. We all have the same agenda. We want a high quality of life for our residents. It's just how do we get there and how do we strike the best deal with all these competing constituencies, which really aren't competing, because when everyone does well, everyone actually does do well.
How do you differentiate yourself from the other candidates, the front runners?
Primaries are about choices. They're about who's best. I think 3 things really differentiate me in this race. 1, my life experience. Experiencing the whole range of economic opportunity or lack thereof in the county, growing up as a low-income renter, the son of a Nigerian immigrant, white woman from Kansas who moved here for economic opportunity, moving 5 times before 8th grade, being pulled over dozens of times by law enforcement here. Losing a friend to gun violence. I just have had a very different set of life experiences that I think is more representative of who this county is. 2 is my deep, broad policy experience at the federal and local level, working in the Obama White House for Nancy Pelosi, for Sherrod Brown, managing large programs, founding and running the largest summer jobs program in our county's history. And then third, being bold and standing up for what's right and who needs help. Rent stabilization, prevailing wage, criminal justice reform, the Crown Act, for the first county in the nation to restrict discrimination based on natural hair. Those are the types of things I step up for. Minority businesses, expanding the program from 20 to 25% of how much of our $1 billion in procurement goes to small, minority, female-owned, disabled-owned businesses. I think I've had a bold agenda and I've stood up for it, taken some heat, but also brought a lot of people together to get near unanimous votes on most all of those things.
Will Jawando, it's been a pleasure to talk. Thank you so much for sitting down with me. We hope to have you back on.
Thanks for having me on.
That was Montgomery County Executive Candidate Will Jawando. You can find more information about his campaign at willjawando.com. Our conversation took place on Tuesday, April 21st in Silver Spring, Maryland. And as you could hear, Jawando's campaign is participating in the Public Campaign Financing Program. Now, according to the April 7th, 2026 Matching Fund Report, his campaign has received total contributions nearing $767,000. The campaign has received multiple endorsements from unions, including the coveted Montgomery County Education Association's Apple Ballot. To look up campaign finance reports of the candidates, PACs, independent expenditure campaigns, and so much more, visit campaignfinance.maryland.gov. Music for this episode comes from the Chamber Music Ensemble Bach Street Boys. Jerome Amon plays the cello and goes to Lakelands Park Middle School, where Henry Stubbs is the music teacher. Ayush Banerjee plays the violin and goes to North Bethesda Middle School, where Agata Miklavitz is the music teacher. And Malachi Winder plays the piano. He's homeschooled and taught by Dr. Jamila Takali Hanner. They play together at the Levine School of Music under the tutelage of Susan Katsarelis. Here they are playing Joseph Haydn's Piano Trio in G major. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone who wants to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you will like, listen, and share the show as we bring you stories about politics close to you and your home. I'm Umbreen Khan, sitting in for Sunil Dasgupta. See you next time.